Hello everyone and welcome to task 5 of our SQL injection video series. Actually, task 5 is where we're going to start our practical labs. So we can see that the previous tasks we did from task 1 to task 4 were all kind of theoretical, where we try to understand the basics of SQL databases and then SQL injection vulnerabilities, but we actually haven't started anything practical, and that's going to change because from task 5 to task 9 is going to be all practical, where we demonstrate the skills we've acquired and try to use those skills to exploit the vulnerabilities in the web apps we're going to see in the labs. So without much I say, let's see what we have in task 5. So task 5, we have inbound SQLi. So let's see what that is. Inbound SQL injection is the easiest type to detect and exploit. In inbound just refers to the same method of communication being used to exploit the vulnerability and also receive the results. For instance, discovering an SQL injection vulnerability on a website and then being able to extract data from the database to the same page. All right. And then we also have error-based SQL injection, which is another form of an inbound SQL injection. So this type of SQLi is the most useful for easily obtaining information about the database structure, as error messages from the database are printed directly to the browser screen. So you'll be able to see the error, which will display maybe the type of database software which is running and all that. So you can get that from the error, or maybe if your query is not properly structured, it will throw that kind of error for you to see what is going on. And then we also have another type called union-based SQL injection. So this type of injection utilizes the SQL union operator, which we learned in the previous task, alongside select statement to return additional results to the page. This method is the most common way to extracting large amounts of data via SQL injection vulnerability here. So now we have the practical. So click the green start machine button to use the SQL injection example practice lab. Each level contains a mock browser and also SQL query and error boxes to assist in getting your queries or payload correct. So we're going to see all this, but first of all we need to start our machine. So let's get our machine started, and then our machine is started. This is going to take some time, so what I'll do is I'll pause the video and come back when the lab is fully set up. Alright, so our lab is fully loaded, it's set up now and ready to use. So this is how it looks like. We have our mock browser at the top, and then we have a box that will display the SQL query which will be sent to the database when we are modifying information in our browser. And then we also have an answer box. So over here at the end, whatever information that you get, we may be asked to provide an answer here so that we can move to the next the next stage. So if you see, this is the level, the next level, I guess. So this is the first level. You come here, we'll try to access the other level. So level 2, level 3, level 4, but you can see that we don't have access to them yet because we've not completed level 1. So we need to complete level 1, provide an answer. So in level 1, you're trying to find out what Martin's password is. So we have to exploit this web app with SQL vulnerability, SQL injection, to be able to get the password for Martin. So that's what we're actually going to do. And then let's see. So with the practical, we have a lot of information here, a lot of text. I'm not sure I'm going to read all this text, and we'll just try to do it practically, and I'll explain as we go along. So it's TLDR. Not gonna read all this, too long, did not read. So let's get started. So to actually find out whether a web page is vulnerable to SQL injection or not, mostly you try to input some characters and see if you get error messages. So yeah, so I just remove the one ID one, and then I put, if you put one, so it's like this is an ID, a parameter. So from the query string, this parameter is actually going to bring back the block ID or article that you want to read. So if you put 2, it's going to give you the second article. So we assume that these articles are stored somewhere in the database. So 1, it will give you the first article in that particular database or table. If you put 2, get the second article. If you try 3, no results found. So we don't have any third article. We try 4, nothing comes up. We try 0, there's nothing. So it means that we assume we have only 2 articles in the database. That's right. So the first article with an ID of 1 and the second article with an ID of 2. So here we can try to, and then let's say if we put an article 1, so this is the query that goes to the database. So it will select star from article where ID is equal to 1. So this is the query that goes to the database in the back end, and then it retrieves the information and displays it on the web page for us. So that's what is rendered here on our front end. So that's what happens. So since we know that the information we put here goes into the database, we can try to see if it's vulnerable. So to do that, for that test, we just put these characters, mostly an apostrophe or double quotes. Mostly that's a trick. So first of all, we'll do an apostrophe to see if it will throw us an SQL error. So here we have an SQL error. So we see syntax error, and then we can see the kind of database management system running, which is my SQL server. All right. So if we have this kind of information, it means the web page is vulnerable to SQL injection. So what we do from here, we can use the union select statement to see if we can get some other information. So if we use the union select, so from our previous task, the union select is just trying to combine information from different tables. So the first table and then our table, we are trying to add our own table to get to extract information. That's what we are planning to do. So we can see that the used select statement have different number of columns. So this tells us that if we put 1, we have more than 1 column. So we put 2, and then still we have the same error. So the number of columns have to match if you are using the union statement. So we put 3, and then when we put 3, the error vanishes, and then we are able to get something from our SQL query. All right, so this means that we have 3 columns in both tables. So our table and then the original table. All right, so what we need to do here, so let's try to access an ID which is not available. So if we try to access an ID which is not available, what happens is that the first select statement is not going to run because we don't have this ID 3, and now our query is what is going to run. Our union, so the second select statement is what is going to run. So you can see that it's now displaying the inputs that we put in there, so the columns. So we have 1 column 1 column 2 column 3. You can change this to any number. So if you put 4, it will display as column 4, and 5, it will display as 5. So these particular columns are vulnerable, so we can actually use them to extract information from the database. So instead of putting 5, we can just say database, and then we are able to extract the name of the database. All right, we can also say version, and then we are able to see the version of the server. running the database. All right, so here let's go back and put the database. So we have the name of the database, which is called SQLi1. So let's see what we can do. Let's keep some notes. Okay, so the B name, you can say the B name is SQL1. So we'll come back to this. Sorry. So that's what we have, and then so since we know we can actually extract data from here, we can try to find table name. Let's see what we'll get. So we have an error here. So what we have to do is it doesn't know where to find this table name from, so we have to find it from somewhere. So we say table name from information schema, I think, dot tables, where table schema is equal to SQLi1, which is our database that we're able to extract. Yeah, let's see if we can get information here. So, yeah, so we've been able to get a table name because that's what we specified. Table name here. So we have a table name called article, and this is not the only table name. What happens here is that it just senses the first record that shows up from this query. So to be able to gather all table names, we have to use a method called group concat. So we can use group concat, and then we put table name with the same command. So this is how, let me copy it onto our, so this is how the query is going to look like. Okay, so this is, we are union selecting, so we are selecting this group concat table name from information schema.tables, where table schema is equal to our database name, which we were able to extract with the database method. All right, so let's go back and then see if we use the group concat. So the group concat is going to return all the table names and then put them in a comma separated string. Let's see if it works here. Yeah, so we can see that we have two tables. So we have a table called article and a table called staff users. We can come back here and then we say tables. So these are the two tables that we have. And yeah, so what we want to do is to find the password for Martin. So we assume that password definitely is going to be somewhere in this table other than the table for article. So article table is going to contain probably the articles and some HTML content which will be rendered on the web page, and then staff users that will contain maybe their usernames and password. That's what we assume. So we try to focus on this second table, and let's see if we can get other information from that second table. So what we do now is, now we have a table and then we have the database. So now we want to find the columns in this particular table. So let's see if we can modify our SQL query. So instead of table name, now we want to find column name from information schema.columns. So here we are not actually going to talk about tables. We are looking for columns, where table name So we are going to try to extract the information from this table. So we don't care about the database again. We are actually now zooming into the table that contains the data. So we're trying to find the columns in that table. So we replace our command here, and then here, so it returns some results. So these are the columns in the staff users table. So we say column. So these are the columns. So we have the ID, username, and then password. So we can go ahead to try to extract the usernames and passwords. All right, the actual data. So let's see how we can modify this query again. So now we are trying to extract usernames and passwords. So we have username and password. So those are the columns we want to extract from. So in this case, from the table. So what table are we talking about? So the table is staff users. So yeah, I think that should be the query from staff users. Let's see if this will give us some results. Okay, yeah, so we have some results, but the results looks cluttered. All right, so this is username, password, username, password, username, password. So the group concat is using the comma to separate the various rows that came up. All right, so we can make this output a bit more readable. So what we need to do is just to modify. So the group concats, we can actually add some more parameters in there. So here we want to separate the username and the password with a colon. So we'll do it this way, and then we want every username and password to come on a new line. So we can use a separator. I think this is an attribute. So a separator, and then what do we want to use as a separator? So BR. So BR is just a line break. So we want to break from every line. Let's see how the output is going to look like. Okay, I think this is supposed to, it's a string, so we need to put it in quotes. Let's see. All right, so our output now looks more readable. And then the question was, what is Martin's password? So this is Martin's username, and then Martin's password is probably this. So let's see if that will take us to the next level. We put it, Martin's password here, we check, and then we are right. And we have our flag here, which we can submit to see if it's correct, and it will take us to the next task. So let's submit our flag, and then that's correct. So that's the end of that particular task, and I'll see you in task 6.